Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs. Great to have you with us on this Tuesday edition. Not only Golf Channel, but PGA Tour Radio, Sirius XM. That is channel 92. And of course, as you know, this program is always presented by Century Insurance. They want to be right by you. When it comes to business insurance, every business needs it. Are you being satisfied? Are all of your needs being met? Evaluate it all with Century. Golf Pride, when it comes to grips, grip shops, options, the materials, the products, Golf Pride is the best product line, trusted by more players. It's not even close anywhere in the world. Speaking of not close, the best lifestyle line, apparel, men and women. It is Peter Millar, this artisan crafted cashmere soft blazer with the zip can be yours at petermillar.com. This is one of the best pieces I've ever had. And you can say, how many layers do you have on? I stopped counting. It's 30 degrees in Charlotte, and you can say, well, you're inside. That's illogical. We keep it climate controlled in here. Speaking of which, before we get to the program, it is the season to be in the market for trees. I just found out that one of our staff, Kevin here, all in at $168 yesterday in South Charlotte for an 8-footer. And he got home and it had no aroma. So what did he do? PEDs, performance enhancing deodorants. He was spraying the scent of tree around his townhome. Doesn't count. He is ineligible, like many trying to get into halls of fame. All right, what are we doing today on this Tuesday? Well, this whole week is about game chasers, people who pursue the game. And if you consider how much has changed, not only in golf and how many people are playing and the demographics, and it's much younger than it used to be, and they're more young than there are old and all that. Well, a lot of the people driving are the people telling the stories, chasing the stories, and not just the best players, telling you about golf courses and where to go and where to stay and where to play and destination golf and putting on events. But there are the OGs, and Jaime Diaz is one of them. Jaime's going to join us. He's a contributor here at Five Clubs, but he also writes as well as anybody and has forever for Golf Digest, also a contributor live from on Golf Channel. And then, we didn't time it this way, but timing is an amazing thing. It's just that. It's timing. 10 years ago today, Andy Johnson, what an ambitious young fella he was, said, you know, I'm going to put out a newsletter about golf. And maybe a handful of people will read it. Well, they did. And 10 years later, Friday Golf is what it is. So Andy Johnson, the founder of Friday Golf, and at one time it was the Fried Egg. And then I guess Justin Timberlake said, drop the. Just make it Fried Egg. Remember when he walked away in Social Network? And they were like, woo, isn't that guy cool? Well, Andy and Brendan Porath, who are really the key drivers, but I'm not trying to discount anybody. By the way, they kind of look like that old Bartles and James ad. I don't know who's Bartles and who's James, but those guys have a team of people who not only cover the best, biggest events in golf, but the whole impetus for creating the newsletter was, can we connect golfers through architecture and design and not only educate them, but make them more interested in the game at large? It's worked. 10 years later, Fried Egg is they're almost like a Major League Baseball team. They have a staff swelling to almost 20 people. They cover all aspects of golf. So Andy Johnson and Brendan Porath are going to join me here in just a couple minutes. We'll talk about the beginning, which was today, 10 years ago. And I just want to remind you of a few things. I brought some props. You know, 10 years ago, I lived and died by this thing. Yeah, it's actually a real thing that you leaf through and you read all this stuff. Golf World Magazine doesn't exist anymore. Jeff Russell was the editor. He became the editor at Golf Channel when I was there for many, many years. And by the way, Jaime Diaz has a little article in the back of this. This is March of 2014. Yeah, that was written about me. See, I read this every month just to massage my little fragile ego. But I love this. These types of things are gone. And by the way, I brought this in as well. The old Distance Insights report dated February of 2020. You know what happened a month later? The world caved in. This is not something I Googled yesterday and printed it off my printer at home. This was my original copy that I was using as reference, because the reason I brought this in, the first time I knew that Fried Egg, and I was already reading it and consuming it before this moment, was that day that day that we went on the air was me, Brandel Chambly, Rich Lerner, and Jaime Diaz to digest, decipher, and peruse this Distance Insights report from the USGA and the R&A. And I'll never forget, in a very spirited pre-show production meeting headed by Matt Hegarty, everyone was given their thoughts on what was in there and what their reaction was going to be. And I'll never forget Brandel Chambly saying, what's interesting is the reaction from Fried Egg and from their readers. And I'm thinking, wow, they've got themselves traction. They've got themselves platform. They've got themselves an audience. And he was right. He was right about that, like he's been right about many things. He's been wrong about other stuff. And by the way, last thing I brought in here, because they still do exist, but you got to wait 3 months to get it. See, these great magazines, while a lot has changed in terms of how we consume golf, Golfer's Journal, this quarterly, that's platinum right there. So you can still get the magazine, but it's not like you're getting it every week like Golf World. And that's why outfits like Fried Egg or No Laying Up or the Subpar Podcast or Foreplay, and I can go on and on and on and on and on, because there's a lot. But the people who do it most, the reason why they can do it the most is because the audience is there. Because I've learned something about the digital medium. If you can't monetize it, there's not a likelihood that you're going to be doing a lot of it, because it costs a little bit of money. Well, where we are now in terms of people pursuing the game and providing you with information, whether it's to watch a podcast or to read newsletters or to go to events, because Friday Golf has an entire calendar of events because they have a membership. And people who support them also support their events. And that's true of other outfits as well, like the Broken Tee Society and No Laying Up. And I admire the hell out of all of them, because they saw an idea and they turned it into a business. And it's a business because people consume it. Golf's in a hell of a place for a lot of reasons. And outfits like Friday Golf are one of the reasons. So is Jaime Diaz, because he's doing what he did 45 years ago, and he's still doing it exceptionally well. But he's also on television because he can be, because he's good. So that's where we are on this Tuesday. Andy Johnson from California, live on a Tuesday morning. And Brendan Porath, after putting, I don't know how many kids on various school buses on a Tuesday outside of the nation's capital. The guys who drive Friday Golf coming up. And later on, Jaime Diaz, who writes about the game and sees the game in such an interesting and thoughtful way. Great to have you with us. Golf Channel. By the way, when Morning Drive was started in 2011, there was no Good Morning Football. They were the first to say, we'll go live in the morning. Golf, the little engine that could. We're back with the guys from Fried Egg right after this. Back in on this Tuesday here, Golf Channel, also PGA Tour Radio, Sirius XM. That's Channel 92. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. Yeah, this artisan crafted cashmere soft blazer with the zip, I'm telling you, it's killer, can be yours like anything else when it comes to the holidays or any time of the year. It's the great lifestyle brand. It's Peter Millar at petermillar.com. It's about game chasers, people who chase stories, chase people, chase places. And nobody does it and has done it like these guys have. Now they have an amazing team. Joining me now, speaking of apparel, when you're big enough, you have your own deal as well with Billy D. All right, joining me now from California and outside the nation's capital, the founder and the director of content for Friday Golf, Andy Johnson, Brendan Porath. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Fantastic. Good to be with you this morning, Gary.
Andy,
it's bright and early,
Andy, how long did you work on that backdrop?
We've got a little situation going on in my house, so I'm in like option C of recording. So bear with me. It feels like a hostage situation, but I can speak freely here, which in my main setup I wasn't able to do this morning.
Very good. All right. I mentioned at the top of the show, timing something. It was 10 years ago, I believe, to this day, that the first newsletter went out. So Andy, let me start with you. First of all, how long were you thinking about, I want to do a golf newsletter? And where is that newsletter? And what was in that newsletter?
Yeah, I was working in tech startups in Chicago, and I had a real entrepreneurial itch. I wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to start a company, and I was in the media space. So I really kind of gravitated towards a company about media. And it was funny. I'd always been really into golf and, played golf, grew up caddying. And I was also at that time really into basketball. I would watch so much basketball at that point in my late 20s. And it kind of came down between those two. And to be completely honest, I was terrified of writing about basketball every day. And golf schedule lended itself a little bit better to my situation with work. And, to be completely honest, I know a little bit more about basketball. I don't know much about, or I know a little bit more about golf. I don't know much about golf, but a little bit more. And that was kind of the tipping edge to golf. It was just, I wasn't a very good writer. I was horrible. You can ask Brendan about my grammatical skills. They're bad. So I was a bad writer, and I thought golf I know a little bit more about. So that's how I settled on golf. And that first newsletter, it went out to 10 people. So 10 people have it in their inbox. It wasn't called Friday Golf at that time. It was called the Golf Hack. And I think I wrote about the shark shootout. Oh, how things have changed. I don't think a PGA Tour sanctioned event will ever be called the shark shootout again. But it was about the shark shootout. I remember Bubba Watson was in the news for something. I got to dig it up and read it today.
Wow. Brendan, with your path as somebody who was trying to understand and did understand the digital side of things. I remember you started to contribute on Morning Drive. The decision to join Andy, what was it that you saw not only stimulation for yourself, but growth as a business? What was the motivation and the curiosity, and also this could work for all of us?
Well, yeah, obviously, I had been in digital media for about 7-8 years at that point. So I thought I sort of understood the business, understood content, and seeing Andy and what he developed, some of it, that entrepreneurial spirit that he talked about, a lot of it just authenticity. I think that's always been a priority for him and for me and for everyone who contributes and works at Friday Golf. It's trying to remain as unconflicted as possible. We saw, he saw an opening there. That was kind of my mission and my voice and what animated me and how I covered the game. And then obviously expertise. I think he says he knows a little bit about golf, but he's one of one in the space right now, as someone who has, watched the space for a good bit of time now and grew up, idolizing, you guys on Golf Channel, talking that story about Brandel, like we watched live from religiously. Read Golf World, you held up the Golf World. It was really nostalgic to see that. I would read that cover to cover. So we're straddling both eras. We came up in consuming that era, but obviously the dynamics of the media landscape changed as we wanted to get into the business. And having viewed it and watched it and consumed it now for so long, Andy is truly one of one. He's a savant when it comes to golf, whether it's talking about architecture, whether it's talking about how you play the game, whether it's talking about the pro game. And sometimes he's an idiot savant. So that makes him more endearing with the way he comes across. But he is really one of one and sort of understood what mattered in content, keeping it authentic, keeping it unconflicted, being sensible and reasonable and trying to make something good, whether that good is just humorous, whether it's insightful, whether it is educational, whatever it is, at the end of the day, it's something good. And it's not driven by just money or attention or making some sort of impact and dent that has some ulterior motive. And the ability to just want to make something good and be yourself. And obviously his enormous talent for understanding golf, whether it's architecture or the game itself.
The idiot savant is far more charming than the arrogant savant. There's no doubt.
Right.
It's not even close. so much like I'm holding up this stuff, and it is nostalgic, but it wasn't that long ago. So, Andy, what has changed the most, do you think, in the 10 years since you launched?
In the media space?
Just overall. You can look at it any way you want in golf.
I've told this story a couple times. I played high school golf. I went to college, and I was on a really good high school golf team, and it was a situation. I went to college. I remember at that time, sometimes I didn't even tell people I played golf in high school. People ask what sports did you play in high school, because golf was not cool. I remember people making fun of that I wore khaki shorts and a collared shirt a lot. And I think about golf then, and then I think post-COVID and what's going on now, I think it's wild to me that golf is so cool now, with so many different generations. I think the fact that, I think if you said who are the two most recognizable NBA players right now, Steph Curry and LeBron James, they are so golf obsessed. And that is so great for the sport. I know that there are people that can get offended by the participation and the new people in the sport sometimes. And I think it's ridiculous. Golf is such an amazing game. And I think about my childhood and growing up caddying and all the skills and experiences that shaped me on the golf course. And I just think it's an amazing situation that golf's in right now, with participation up, the popularity up, and people experiencing the game in different ways. That's the beauty of the game, is that you get to shape how you experience it. And I think that's one of the bigger things that's changed in golf, is that kind of the pretense has dropped. Some of the fear of picking up the game has gotten less in the last 5 years specifically. And I think that's just amazing for the game.
Brendan, with all the stuff that you guys pursue, we all kind of get back to the foundation of pro golf. And Rory has always been interesting. This year was one of the great high wire acts in all these different ways. Great emotion, drama, exhaustion, all of it. But he also gives, and look, you guys have a connection to him. He appreciates the work. And access it's a neat thing. It's not everything. But I want to ask you, he shares. Sometimes he gets in a space where he's like, I'm not. But somehow he still manages to, he can't help himself. What do you think is the most interesting thing that he said all year?
Yeah, that is a big ocean of comments and content to choose from. And I was thinking about it. We've done, with his last official quote unquote start last week, we did a lot of sort of reflecting and retrospective and research on the year. I thought one of the interesting things he said was a secondhand comment made from Harry to him in the Sunday night after the Masters, where he said, well, pal, when they're walking to the playoff, right? And he had missed a very short putt to win it in regulation at the Masters, and similar to Pinehurst the year before, similar distance. And, they're walking to the playoff, and he had the 4-shot lead on the back nine. And he recalls Harry, where they're walking out, and Harry says to, well, pal, on Monday, we would have taken this every day of the week, anytime. Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of just evoked, a lot of the heartbreak and crushing defeats, and being in the arena and coming up short, but still having the chance. And he had a comment to Kevin, wrote about it last week at LA after a heartbreak there, losing to Wyndham Clark. He said, I walked through another 1,000 Sundays like this just to get one major. And I think that comment from Harry and those people around him during these 11 years, and Harry's been a big part of that, who have kept him sort of centered with all sort of this kind of almost incomprehensible 11-year drought, given where we were in August of 2014, who've kept him sort of centered on, hey, you would take this on Monday morning. You would take this. Forget about the last, 2.5 hours of blowing the lead, the shot into 13, the absolute roller coaster. You got one hole. Well, pal, on Monday, we would have taken this anytime. And I thought that was really interesting and sort of encapsulates sort of the mindset of Rory, certainly at that Masters and all through this 11-year drought that culminated really. Maybe the greatest major Sunday of our lifetime. We're not that old. We're old, but not that old. But among the greatest, maybe the greatest that I've seen in person.
Yeah, it's totally fair. Andy, you can answer it that way with something you said, or I would also ask you a singular moment that will never leave your mind about him in the arena. It may not be on the golf course. It may be walking somewhere. Is there one that stands out?
I think that the obvious answer of him in the arena is the Masters in this year, 2025 Masters. And I think, if you look at the Masters in the last 6 years, getting Tiger in 2019 and Rory in 2025 is two of the most compelling stories in all of sports in the 2000s.
Yep.
You have Tiger coming back, obviously, from a rash of injuries, wondering if he'll ever get back to the top of the mountain and conquering it. And watching that was incredible. I'll never forget watching that. I was watching it from a rental house in Augusta. Brendan had credentials. I didn't at that time. And we talked about it after, and you just remember it was like history. And this year it was it wasn't it wasn't the greatest of all time trying to get back to the top of the mountain. It was someone who was, who's the greatest of a generation trying to exorcise demons that have haunted him for 10 years. And watching him just, I think I was out there with the patrons, and you're just living and dying with every shot. And it felt like it was over after 12. And I think in a way, maybe Rory thought it was over, and that's where he kind of lost it. But then to get it back and the shots, the shot on 13, obviously the kind of almost despair of it, the shot on 15 and the jubilation, and it wasn't over yet then. The shot on 17,
yes.
I'll never forget. I was standing up by the green on 17 and I couldn't see him hit the shot. And all of a sudden it just landed right by the hole, and everybody went wild. And then 18, that crowd, and just how tough it was to just get a glimpse of a vantage point, and everybody fixated without technology. And I think that's the thing with the Masters that's just so magical is I think about that round and just the sheer presence of the patrons. Everybody there was just locked in to Rory. And my parents went to the Masters for the first time that Sunday. And I told them, I was telling them places they should go. And, I wouldn't worry about following Rory's group. It's going to be too busy. And then sure enough, on the 8th hole, I'm walking up the hill trying to get a little ahead. And I see my parents and they're like, we had to watch Rory. We have to watch Rory. And they tried to, they followed him all the way around, but that was everybody there. Everybody was glued to the same group and the same story and totally present because you didn't have cell phones.
Wow. Brendan, if my memory serves, he referenced 19. I think you and I had dinner at T-Bone's early that week with the insufferable Eamon Lynch. That's right. The moment I remember about Tiger, is having to sit with Eamon for 90 minutes on a Tuesday. I wish we had a ton more time, but I want to ask you, as far as we look ahead to 26, Scheffler is in this production and performance space that's really rare. I mean, really. So, Brendan, is performance alone enough, even if there's a taciturn way about kind of the way he does it, whereas Rory's the trapeze artist and Scottie's the toll booth collector? You're going to pay. You're going to pay. He's going to make you pay. And there's a monotony to it. How is he more interesting now than he was a year ago?
Because he's the most dominant, most brilliant golfer we've seen since Tiger Woods. I think that should be enough for us. I think sometimes, Tiger, I wouldn't say was zipping with personality off the golf course. He was pretty monotone and matter of fact in everything he said. Now he was a completely new entity, and like the fist pumps, unlike anything we've seen when he came around. But what we fell in love with was the brilliance, the sheer dominance in golf, and I think that's all Scottie needs. I think trying to make himself into something more would be sort of a disservice and end up in a bad place. So I think he's extremely compelling. I think he's found his voice. I'll never forget, honestly, behind the scenes, he came on Morning Drive, and I was on Morning Drive. I was a guest there, maybe it's called like 6 years ago, before COVID, and he was a Korn Ferry player. I think he just won on the Korn Ferry Tour, and he was dry, deadpan, gave you nothing. I remember when he did the interview, we kind of turned to each other, and I was fortunately not tasked with asking any questions. Might have been Damon. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus here. But like, wow, he gave us nothing there. That guy is like a dial tone, as Andy would say. And he's found his voice. He's incredibly compelling. He might not say histrionics or in raising and changing the volume of his voice, but he's incredibly compelling. We saw it with sort of his answer at Portrush at the Open. I think he's weighing in with a much stronger voice, understands his place in the game. And like Tiger said last week, he's incredible to watch play golf, and that's what we want. Whether it's changing trajectories, changing shot shapes, watching him on the range, he'll hit a low draw, then a high fade, just messing around. This is what we want. He's not necessarily, he's a robot in outcome, but not a robot in process. And he's more of an artist. And I think just watching it all should be enough for him to be a super compelling number one player in the world.
Let me get a thought, Andy, from you on venues, because you guys, not only do you share, I know, look, players, including Rory, have said openly, like I've watched this from Fried Egg to give myself a little capsule of understanding before I get on site. Give me a non-major venue in 26 that you're tickled about, excited about. Could be any event. What is it?
Gary, I might have to take the toll booth operator moniker for Scottie. I really like that one. Reminds me of the troll toll from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But for non-major venues, this could be recency bias, but I really loved watching the Australian Open last week. It was, God, what a December treat that was for golf sickos and golf tragics. Like watching one of the greatest golf courses at prime time, a firm course that required, supreme shot making. And I'm not going to go any further than the Australian Open next year at Kingston Heath. Hopefully we get a little bit more TV coverage, maybe a little bit more bells and whistles that we've grown accustomed to in modern television. And hopefully we get more great players down there. I'd love, I know, I'd love to see some players bypass the hero and go down to Australia and continue to build that event, because I just think it's an amazing event for golf fans. If you talk about product on the course, just sheerly on the course, I don't think there's 4 tournaments that are better than the Australian Open. I think you'd put it right up there in terms of the golf shots demanded last week at Royal Melbourne with any major championship.
Yeah, I would say if you look at the USGA calendar in 26, I think there are a number of places that'll be neat and fun to see. Obviously, an amateur at Marion with the speed, the distance of a lot of the players in that field. Last thing for both of you, a personal round, Brendan. What was the most satisfying, enjoyable round of golf you had this year?
Well, unlike Andy, I am very bad at golf. So it's more about place and presence and less about the shots. I played at Port Stewart Wednesday night before the Open Championship. We snuck over there late, like 7 o'clock. Of course, it stays late there, and whipped around with Joseph Lamagna, our colleague. And the sun was absolutely shining and going down over the west coast or the northwest coast of Ireland. So just the scenery of that as we went into that Portrush Open Championship was a round of the year and one I won't forget.
Very good. Andy, for you, the list is long.
I'll go. 2 years in the making, we got a group of my college buddies together. There were 12 of us at Brambles in Northern California for a weekend. The last day of the trip, we played a 12-some, something you can't do everywhere. And they're all pretty new to golf for the most part, and it was just fun to play. We played alternate shot, a format they're not used to. You know, the idea of playing a 12-some, hadn't crossed their mind, and just the fun of being out with a bunch of old friends that you don't get to see very often at a really amazing place was, that'll be the tops for me this year.
That's awesome. Listen, I appreciate you both, not only the work, but the willingness to share time with me. In 26, I hope I can get you both in here, do the whole show in studio one day. That is a goal. I congratulate both of you, Andy, for having, the curiosity is, who knows, basketball, golf. I'm glad you didn't go the Adrian Wojnarowski route, because you'd be the general manager of a mid-major now by choice, because he couldn't take it anymore. Happy holidays to both of you, and appreciate all the work that you guys do at Friday Golf.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay, Andy Johnson, Brendan Porath. Those are winning words presented by Century Insurance when it comes to having a conversation, the valued conversations. Century wants to be there to give you the right answers. When we continue, Jaime Diaz, who's been a guest on Friday Golf, why wouldn't he be? He is Yoda. He will join me next. Doesn't look like him. He's a very, very distinguished gentleman from Golf Digest, Golf Channel, and a contributor here at 5 Clubs. Jaime Diaz coming up next. Welcome back here to 5 Clubs Golf Channel, PGA Tour Radio Series 6M Channel 92. This segment is brought to you by Golf Pride. With all the options that you have, and I'm talking about the kinds of grips you like, nobody gives you more options, but more importantly, all those options are the best materials. That is through the bag at Golf Pride, the leader in golf grips globally. All right, joining me now, a guy who can give you context about individuals and events as well as anybody, a wonderful writer, and said, you know what, I can do this television thing, and he started doing that, and I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with him on Morning Drive the last couple of years that Morning Drive was on the air, and now not only is he still writing at Golf Channel, he is writing for Golf Digest, contributing on Live From. We get him to contribute modestly here at 5 Clubs. He, of course, is Jaime Diaz. Good morning, my friend. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great, Gary. Nice to be with you. That was a great segment with
those guys are great. Yeah, they're great. I know that you've been on with them. For you, you've seen so much change. I brought this prop in today from March of 2014. This golf roll with AP on the cover. The words from the Wise issue. I want to start though with Tiger, because for a lot of people's lives in golf, he's like their whole life in golf. And I'm curious from your viewpoint, who are the voices or the people around the game, or not even in the game, do you think he had curiosity about or even leaned into conversation with?
Well, I think he had tremendous curiosity coming up. I mean, Earl was a curious man, and I think Earl answered a lot of questions for Tiger, and their relationship was based on conversations about being, an athlete, being a golfer, being great, and Earl was a fountain of knowledge. He thought about it a lot. Tiger was his last child, and he just stored everything up as a mentor and as a teacher to give to his son. But I think once Tiger started, playing golf, he loved his teachers. He loved Rudy Duran. He loved John Anselmo. He loved Jay Brunza. But I think at some point, Tiger was trained to sort of, you learn and then you move on to a new challenge and new knowledge. And so he kind of left those guys. And then, of course, Butch Harmon, who, Butch always described Tiger as a sponge. And Butch is an incredible storyteller, and Tiger had a million questions, and he loved the history of it, and he loved hearing Hogan's stories. While he was at Stanford, I think this is a little off the radar, I think it's a fascinating relationship, was with Bill Walsh, who was then coaching Stanford after leaving the 49ers. And, Bill Walsh, God, maybe the greatest coach ever, and such an intellectual about sports. And Tiger would come to his office. He just had an open door policy. Bill loved talking to Tiger. And I think Tiger learned a lot, especially at that point in his life. He was really open to learning and wanted to know everything that he could about greatness, whether it was Montana, all the people that, Bill Walsh had seen. So once once Tiger got on tour, he really wanted to understand what it was to be a pro. And I think Mark O'Meara came at a great time because that was a daily relationship. They played golf every day at Isleworth. Mark's a very easygoing guy, but a very thoughtful guy, not overbearing. Tiger doesn't like a lot of knowledge foisted on him. He likes to let me ask the questions when I want to know. And sometimes he just takes it in. You don't even know his reaction. It turns out it was profound for him. So, gosh, it just goes on. But I think it diminished as Tiger got to know more because once he knew a lot, the bar on what was going to be interesting to him really got raised. And so I think he's had fewer mentors going as he's gotten older and influence. I think Michael Jordan was an influence. Not constantly, but I think they had a lot of contact, and Tiger admired obviously where Michael had gotten, maybe the greatest athlete ever, and picked his brain much like Kobe did with Jordan. I think Michael was very, willing and I think felt privileged actually to pass stuff on. So, right now Tiger, I think, is at a point where he's going to give it as opposed to take it in. And I think as a commentator, he could be great.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, now in this position of sharing, and people lean forward when he chooses to share, which is neat and which will be fun to see as he turns 50 at the end of this month. And now I want to ask you about Jack because you spent a fair amount of time with him, and it's not just sitting down and doing these exercises of questions and answers. You've had access and you've been around the man, and that comes with him believing and having trust and fairness and objectivity. What's interesting about Jack? What's always been interesting about him in your mind?
Well, I think how deeply he thinks about the game and can explain it so well. I think he's the great explainer when it comes to the upper reaches of the game and competition. He knows sports so well, and he knows golf so well, and he knows himself and what it took, and he's very proud of it. And at the same time, I think with humility can talk about his own frailties and what he overcame in certain tournaments and how difficult it was, and how proud he is that his body of work was so great. But I think with Jack, it's the balance he had in his life and the way he could manage a very full life and a pretty complete human being, along with being a complete golfer, with the obsession that it takes to be a great golfer. That's almost his greatest triumph, I think. And I always felt like he had this sort of intuitive, I didn't always feel this, but I got to hear it a couple times as he got older. He had this intuitive sense about what it was going to take to have not just longevity, but to be ready for the big moments. And that was to marshal his time and marshal his energies and limit his schedule and even his practice and the things he worked on in his game to not burn out, basically, to, as he used to say, to keep his juice. And so that it was there when he really needed it. And, I asked him once about, Jack, you didn't win every tournament. What part of the game do you look back on and go, gee, I should have been better at? And he goes, well, I should have been a better short game guy, a better chipper. I kind of leaned on my putting to get to make up for my deficiencies with technique. And it caught up to him later, and Phil Rogers helped him finally. But he said, I could have gotten better at that and tried to be, the greatest chipper ever. But I only had so much time. And if I did that and just obsessed about all these little minutia improvements, I was going to drive myself crazy and start to not like the game. So he kept himself fresh, after September or so. That was it till January. And, he came out and was ready for this. And he was full. And I think this is what's his greatest gift. When the moment came, he rose to it so often. And the last thing I'll say about it, I thought it was the great validator, was at St. Andrews in 2005. He's got like an 18-footer left to right on 18. Doesn't accept, it's his last putt at the British Open. And the last time those people at St. Andrews are going to see him. And it was probably an 8.5 on a scale of 10 difficulty putt. And he just drained it. And, he was an old guy at that time, no nerves, he just channeled that greatness. And that's what he could do. I don't even think he could explain that. When you asked him about it, he goes, I don't know how I did it.
Yeah.
But it was there, and I'm so thankful.
Yeah, that putt, as you mentioned, had about, 4.5 feet of melt from left to right. It would have gone in a thimble.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Last thing, for now anyway. What's the story you want to pursue in 26?
Well, I'm very interested in what's going to happen with the rollback has, basically decreed. But is anybody going to follow it? Is the PGA Tour going to follow it? PGA of America going to follow it? It appears the Masters and obviously the USGA and the R&A will follow it. What will the manufacturers do? It seems like it's unsettled when it should have been settled. And I just think it says a lot about the state of golf, what's going to happen with that. Because I think you need a regulatory body, and I think you need people who care about the good of the game, who you trust, and have them be listened to and respected and followed. And if they don't, and if they aren't followed, that's kind of chaos. And so I think it's an open question right now, and I want to see how that gets resolved and who the dynamic people are who take leadership in that and who affects it so that it's settled.
Along those lines, when you look at the change that we have, 5-6 years ago, Juan was the new guy. Now Juan's the old head among all these factions that have seen change, from who's running the R&A to who's now the leader of the PGA Tour to who's running the PGA of America. And I thought that there was harmony, as much harmony as could exist. Do you think the personalities have the ability to make this thing mesh?
I'm not sure, Gary. I know Mr. Rolap is really respected, and he's done a tremendous amount of incredible innovation with the NFL, which the NFL has become the king of sports, and no sport's ever been as dominant. Maybe baseball certainly was for many years, but God, the NFL is just ubiquitous. So it's hard to argue with his insights, but he's not a golf guy. I think golf is this distinctive. And you can't apply the scarcity and all those things. I don't think that's so easily applied to golf. I think one of the things about golf was that it was every week and so many good players and players popping up all over the place. And I don't know if you want to squelch that by, promoting stars all the time. So, I don't mean to question it other than to say I don't think that's settled either, where golf's going in that regard. But yeah, we have new leadership, and it might be one of the greatest eras ever, and it also might be that we look back and go, we saw the best of it.
Jaime, thank you as always. Happy holidays. Looking forward to doing a lot of this with you next year. Thank you. All right, we had some technical issues. By the way, one last thing about this little document here. When I knew that Jaime could do television was when we went on the air to talk about that night, and he forgot about his notes and got in the ring with Chambly and said, I know you're well coiffed and you're a lethal weapon. I got this. It was a great debate. It was awesome. All right, we take a break. Final thoughts on this Tuesday of 5 Clubs. Golf Channel and also PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92, set up tomorrow as well. Back right after this. Back in last couple minutes here, this Tuesday edition of 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. This segment brought to you by Century Insurance. They want to be right by you when it comes to handling all of your business insurance needs. We appreciate not only them being the presenting sponsor of this program, but investing in golf in very significant ways with the USGA and with the First Tee, Century Insurance. Tomorrow, Hallie Ledbetter. Her dad was one of, you'd look at her dad on the range, you go, look, David Ledbetter, look who he's working with. Well, Hallie played college golf and now has a robust media career and presence. Looking forward to talking about her. I'll never forget playing the Winter Park 9 with her one day when she had just graduated, and she was asked a lot of questions about getting in here, getting in. She's figured it out. She didn't need any advice from me. And also Gabby Herzig will be with us. She's figured it out. She always had the skill of writing, and now she is using her voice to be heard not only here as a contributor on 5 Clubs, but across a lot of different digital platforms, linear television as well. So Hallie Ledbetter, Gabby Herzig tomorrow. And then hopefully by tomorrow we got details on our final week of the year, which will be next week. Could be pretty good. Let me just give you a little history. This Golf World magazine, which, by the way, used to have all the results of all these other tours, I'll never forget. Gosh, I couldn't wait to find a name of somebody I knew in the back pages of Golf World. The world rankings in the end of August, or end of March of 2014, Tiger 1, Adam Scott 2, Henrik Stenson 3, Jason Day 4, Phil 5. Rory was 7th in the world in March of 2014. He would go on to win the PGA Championship, and then he went until April of this year to win his next major. But one thing he hadn't done, he's always been in the top 10, with the exception of 1 year, 2017, where at the end of the year he was 11th. Tell you, greatness for a long period of time in any sports is, as I've said, one of the great measurements of true generational greatness. To live in the top 10 of a world in which, by the way, 9 of the top 25, right then, at that moment, 11 years ago, are guys who play on Live Golf now. Interesting. All right, tomorrow, like I said, Hallie Ledbetter and also Gabby Herzig. One last thing, note, I know that it was Josh Carpenter from Sports Business Journal who had this yesterday, that there is a lot of talk about Brooks Koepka not playing on Live in 2026. Freddie Couples hinted at this months ago. Have a wonderful Tuesday. We look forward to a Wednesday edition of 5 Clubs right here on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio. See you tomorrow.